Jack's expedition team finally arrived at the desert town. However, to their surprise, this turned out to be the town of criminals. As soon as they reached the inn, they were demanded to pay a protection fee. Fortunately, a lady named Emily stepped in and smoothed things over. They had planned to have a good rest at night, but a woman's scream shattered the peace. Danny was the first to rush out. It seemed that he had done this kind of chivalrous act of rescuing a beauty in distress quite often, for he dashed out so quickly. It turned out that several drunkards downstairs were trying to molest a young girl. Danny, the fighter, loved nothing more than to give such villains a good beating. But who would have thought that a Japanese samurai suddenly showed up halfway and said they shouldn't meddle in other people's business? He even said some strange things about protecting them. Well, never mind. You have your own rules, and I have my own code of Western chivalry. At this moment, the truth lies in each person's blade. Let's have a direct showdown. Let there be a duel between the Western fighter and the Japanese samurai.
Chapter 4: Bushido meets the Wild West, a clash of codes.
I'm the boss here, Scarface Harry.
The burly man grinned, revealing a set of uneven teeth.
It seems you're here for the first time, huh?
Jack noticed a hint of danger in Scarface Harry's smile, as if he was sizing up the value of his prey. His gaze swept back and forth among the four of them, finally resting on Sadie.
Beautiful lady. This place isn't very hospitable. You'd better be careful.
Scarface Harry took a step forward and reached out to touch Sadie's cheek. Sadie quickly stepped back and glared at him coldly.
We just want to find a place to rest.
The smile disappeared from Scarface Harry's face, replaced by a sullen expression.
This isn't a place where you can just come and go as you please. You'd better be ready to pay the protection fee.
Protection fee? What do you mean?
Jack frowned. Scarface Harry's gaze grew even more menacing.
This is criminal town. Everyone who enters has to pay a certain amount of money. Otherwise, you know what'll happen.
Jack felt Danny behind him subtly raise his gun, and Sadie also secretly gripped her weapon. The atmosphere was on the verge of exploding.
We need to have a good talk,
Jack said calmly.
We're just passing through. We don't need any protection.
A flash of anger crossed Scarface Harry's face.
Are you looking for death? This isn't a place where newbies like you can run wild.
Just as the two sides were at a standoff, a melodious violin sound suddenly came from the corner. An old woman dressed in a black cloak slowly walked to the front desk. Her face was covered with deep wrinkles, and she held a worn-out violin in her hands.
Quiet,
the old woman said in a hoarse voice.
Scarface Harry, have you forgotten the rules? You can't provoke guests without permission.
Scarface Harry's face turned even darker.
Mrs. Emily!
The rules are the rules.
The old woman interrupted him.
The guests need to rest, so give them a room. As for the protection fee, we'll talk about it after they've stayed for 3 days.
Scarface Harry reluctantly nodded, and his grin with the gold tooth reappeared.
Yes, Mrs. Emily.
Thanks to Mrs. Emily's intervention, the expedition team was able to settle down temporarily. Scarface Harry arranged a room on the top floor for them and warned them not to go out casually.
This place is dangerous. We need to be careful,
Sadie said in a low voice. Danny nodded.
That's right. Everyone here seems to have their own secrets.
Jack walked to the window and looked down at the streets of the town. In the darkness, he vaguely saw several dark figures lurking in the shadows, peeking at the inn. Jack said in a low voice.
We can't stay here for long. Tomorrow we'll get some supplies and then leave this place.
However, just as they were about to rest, a rush of hurried footsteps came from downstairs. Immediately afterwards, a scream pierced the night sky.
Something's wrong!
Danny quickly rushed out the door. Jack and Sadie followed closely behind. The lobby of the inn was in chaos. Several drunkards were trying to molest a young woman, while Scarface Harry's men stood by and did nothing.
Stop!
Jack shouted and pulled out his pistol. The drunkard turned to look at him and gave a sinister grin.
Boy, this is our territory. How dare you meddle in our business? Boy, don't you know the rules here?
Scarface Harry suddenly walked over, his tone cold.
No guns are allowed in the inn. Put your gun away. If you're a man, solve the problem with your fists.
Jack and Danny exchanged a glance, filled with anger and unwillingness. Danny quickly stopped Jack.
Don't be impulsive.
You've already collected the protection fee, haven't you? Why are you turning a blind eye to this?
Danny said coldly. Scarface Harry burst into laughter.
We only guarantee your life. We don't protect your ass.
Danny's face instantly turned gloomy.
Well then, just what I want. Let's settle this with our fists.
With that, Danny was ready to throw a punch. Just then, a samurai dressed in traditional Japanese armor suddenly appeared at the entrance of the lobby. His armor glinted coldly, and he held a sharp Japanese sword in his hand, with a short dagger tucked into his waist. His expression was stern, and a sense of inviolable majesty emanated from between his brows.
Stop.
The samurai said in broken English.
Don't meddle in other people's business, or ask my sword.
Danny was stunned.
Who are you?
My name is Sam Yusuji. I'm a samurai from Nara.
The samurai's voice was low and calm.
You don't need to interfere in what's going on here.
Are you crazy?
Danny shouted angrily.
Don't you see that she's being harassed?
I don't care about your messy business.
Sam said coldly.
I'm here on Mrs. Emily's orders to keep an eye on you. Otherwise, you might end up being stripped naked and thrown out onto the street.
Hearing this, Danny's anger flared even more.
What did you say?
I'm telling the truth.
Sam's gaze was cold.
You outsiders have no idea how dangerous this place is. Just stay in your room obediently.
Then don't blame me for being rude.
Danny pulled out the revolver from his waist.
Put down your weapon.
Sam suddenly took a step forward, his katana glinting with a cold light.
This is my territory.
Danny didn't back down. He quickly pulled out another short dagger and engaged in a fierce fight with Sam. The fight between Danny and Sam was truly a visual feast, filled with the clash of strength and skill. Sam's movements were as fast as lightning, and the katana made a faint humming sound as it sliced through the air. Every move of his was precise and deadly, as if he was calculating the enemy's weaknesses with each strike. Danny, on the other hand, relied on his agility and rich combat experience to try to gain the upper hand in close combat. The two men's fight quickly attracted the attention of everyone in the lobby. Scarface Harry's men stopped what they were doing and stared intently at the confrontation. The air was thick with tension, as if it could explode at any moment. Sam's katana was as flexible as a snake, and every swing carried a deadly threat. He didn't use any fancy moves, every strike went straight for the vital parts. Danny countered with guerrilla tactics, using his agility and the instincts of a gunslinger to dodge and look for opportunities to strike back.
You're strong.
Danny gasped.
But why are you stopping me?
I don't care about your messy business. I'm just following orders.
Sam's reply was still cold. The two men's movements were as swift as the wind, and the glint of swords and knives was filled with a dangerous aura. Although Danny had excellent swordsmanship and fighting skills, he gradually found himself at a disadvantage when facing this well-trained samurai.
Your sword is fast, but I'm faster.
Danny said as he dodged one of Sam's sweeps and counterattacked. He quickly pulled out his short dagger with his right hand and clashed it with the katana, producing a clear metallic sound. Sam sneered coldly.
Speed isn't enough. You also need wisdom.
There was a hint of mockery in his voice, as if reminding Danny that a real battle was not just a contest of strength. Despite the intense fight, the conversation between the two men didn't stop. Danny tried to break down Sam's psychological defenses with his words.
What are you protecting? This woman? Or this filthy place?
Sam's reply was brief and cold.
I'm protecting you.
Then why won't you let me deal with these drunkards? Are you afraid I can't beat them?
Danny seized the opportunity to ask.
Because I've been ordered to keep an eye on you.
Sam's reply left Danny even more confused.
Mrs. Emily said you're important.
These words made Danny's heart skip a beat. Apparently, Mrs. Emily had anticipated their arrival, and Sam's appearance was no accident. Just as the two were locked in a fierce battle, Sadie suddenly jumped down from the corridor on the second floor. Her movements were clean and decisive, and she landed a flying kick on Sam's abdomen, forcing him to take a step back. Sadie said sternly,
Samurai, it's a disgrace to see the weak in trouble and not offer a helping hand.
Sam sneered and took a few steps back.
You outsiders are such a nuisance.
Sadie's sudden intervention changed the situation. She used her fighting skills to defuse the confrontation between the two. At the same time, Jack was also observing secretly from the side, trying to find the best way to resolve this conflict.
Enough!
Jack shouted.
We don't have time to waste here.
In the end, with Mrs. Emily's intervention, the fight was finally brought to an end. Sam gave Danny a cold look.
Remember my words, this is Criminal Town. You'd better pray that you can find a way to leave here.
Danny glared at Sam angrily.
We'll meet again.
Anytime.
Sam's reply was full of confidence. Back in the room, Jack, Danny, and Sadie sat around the bed, and the atmosphere was still a bit tense. Jack's gaze kept turning towards the window from time to time, as if he was still thinking about the figure of that mysterious samurai.
Did you notice that samurai? He seems not to belong here.
Jack suddenly asked.
You mean his armor and sword?
Danny grinned.
It's really strange. Seeing a samurai in Japanese armor in this western town is like traveling through time.
It's not just the armor.
Jack shook his head.
His movements, his eyes, there's something about him that doesn't belong to this era.
Maybe he's crazy?
Sadie put forward her own idea.
Or a fraud, pretending to be a samurai to scare people.
No.
Old Bill firmly shook his head.
His eyes are too focused, too serious. That kind of look, only someone who has experienced too many life and death situations would have.
Jack's gaze became profound.
I don't think he came here just to protect us. He said, Mrs. Emily said you're important just now, which means she already knew we were coming. And he is more like someone sent to keep an eye on us.
Keep an eye on us?
Sadie frowned.
Then are we in danger?
Maybe. But I'm not sure. Maybe he really is here to protect us.
Jack's voice was low.
Anyway, I kind of like him.
Danny suddenly interrupted, his eyes shining with excitement.
He's a real master. That fight just now got my blood pumping.
Are you kidding me?
Sadie glared at him.
He almost knocked you down.
Exactly.
Danny grinned.
That's what makes it interesting. I haven't had such a strong opponent for a long time.
Are you crazy? What we need now is to leave here quietly, not to look for trouble.
Jack shook his head helplessly.
Don't worry.
Danny patted Jack on the shoulder.
I just think, if there's a chance, it wouldn't be bad to have another bout with him.
Sadie was more composed.
Anyway, the appearance of this samurai definitely isn't a coincidence. Mrs. Emily is obviously pulling the strings behind the scenes. We need to figure out her true intentions.
Right.
Jack nodded.
Tomorrow we'll go and ask around about the secrets of this town. Maybe we can find some clues.
As the night grew deeper, Jack lay in bed, and the figure of that samurai still lingered in his mind. His intuition told him that this mysterious samurai was not just a simple bodyguard. There must be a bigger secret hidden behind his appearance.
This town is not simple.
Jack murmured to himself.
And I'm afraid we haven't fully understood its danger yet.